25 years ago, Art Spiegelman published Maus, the story in comic book form of how his Jewish parents survived the Nazi Holocaust in wartime Poland. 6 years later, he published a second volume chronicling their time in Auschwitz. What made the book unique and shocked many was that he portrayed the Jews as mice and the Germans as cats. Now he's published MetaMaus, a book and DVD about the making of Maus. It includes thousands of sketches and drafts and the original audio recordings of conversations with Spiegelman's father that provided the raw material for the story. We came here to Gosh, a comics bookstore in London's Soho, to meet the author. Art Spiegelman, it's 25 years since the first part of Maus appeared. You produced MetaMaus, partly I think because you thought it was time to draw a line underneath the whole episode 25 years on, yet here we are still talking about it. Is this something you can ever put behind you?
I like to think so, but there's something very meta about being interviewed about a book that's built around an interview that's built around another book around an interview. And yet, this feels satisfying to me, even though when I first started working on MetaMaus, I went kicking and screaming. I didn't quite want to do the book I was signed on to do. It's after trying to outrun this beast for a long time, because it was more successful than I had any reason to believe it was going to be when I did it. It seemed like time to turn around, stare it in the eyes, and see what it was for me and for the rest of the planet.
One of the things that you reprint in MetaMaus is some of the rejection letters from publishers.
Like that. Yeah.
And there are lots of reasons that the publishers come up with for not originally publishing Maus. And one of them seems to be, quite simply, that they thought this idea of conceiving Jews as mice was somehow improper.
To say the least, but it was even broader than that. Now in this comics shop with all of these graphic novels, it's hard to remember that when Maus was being made, being a comic book artist was not something you could say out loud. It was a dubious profession at best, and the only thing people could think of would be like mutants in tights or something. So there was no such thing that people recognized as a serious comic. It just wasn't a category. And at the time that Maus was being made, the Holocaust wasn't a subject as it is now for Best Holocaust Movie of the Year at the Oscars.
I know you wrote MetaMaus so that people would no longer ask why pigs, why mice, but I'm going to ask the question, why mice? Because...
Page 127, Nick, it's over.
For those who have not yet read MetaMaus...
Buy it and read page 127. I'm making up the page number, I don't know it that well.
This was a tricky choice, not least because mice and rats had featured in so much Nazi iconography.
But that was one of the reasons I chose those animals. I think even now when I refer to it as mouse heads. They're masks that these characters are wearing. And of course my father was a collaborator on the book, but then so was Hitler. And it involved taking that rhetoric and turning this notion of the subhuman back on itself and letting these mice stand on their hind legs and insist on their humanity. So that's definitely part of how this came to be. It's complex to explain all of it, but I can say that the final solution was built on exterminating Jews, not on murdering Jews. And that notion of extermination, that's what one does to vermin. And it's not peculiar only to the Nazis. It's America, in order to be able to drop bombs on Hiroshima, had to turn the Japanese into bats out of hell.
You say your father was a collaborator on the book, and people who buy MetaMaus also get a DVD which includes some of the interviews that you did with him in the 1970s, recorded, taped interviews.
As soon as she heard that they killed her uncle and they are going to send over all the town who only is left to Auschwitz-Birkenau, to the gas chamber, she carried always poison. And she said, in the last moment, I will not go to the gas chamber. My children will not go to the gas chamber. So she poisoned the children and herself.
How difficult was it to take the raw material of that slightly broken English, that personal memory, and turn it into pages of comic book?
Well, I didn't have a map when I started, which is partially why it took ultimately 13 years to make the 2 volumes. My first notion was just, I want to make a long comic book that needs a bookmark instead of something you can read on the crapper in 10 minutes and forget. And I wanted it to be rereadable. And it wasn't even certain when I was moving toward that goal that I was going to do this particular story. I just wanted a story worth telling because the drawing is arduous. And when I realized, okay, if you want to keep being a comics artist rather than become some kind of highbrow gallery artist, then there's got to be a story.
Was it important to you to do that, to reach out to that big audience because of this particular story, or just because you thought you, Spiegelman, as an artist, were in danger of disappearing into a gallery world where nobody would ever find you?
Well, yeah, I knew that it had to be read, that was part of what making comics was for me, and yet I never had any notion this would be read by more than like 5,000 to 7,000 people. I thought we would publish it ourselves. My wife and I, we had an avant-garde graphics magazine called Raw, and a number of the books that are surrounding me are by Raw alumni, making a case for comics as being more than just escapist stuff. But I never expected a really large audience. I never intended to make something that would make the world a better place, that would teach you must never do this again, or to do anything like, I don't know, justify a case for the existence of Israel or anything. It was really about telling a story worth telling at a time where this story wasn't that well told.
This is a story about a Holocaust survivor, but it's also the story about a Holocaust survivor's son, his child, coming to terms with that. How important was that at the outset, or is that something that emerged during the making of the book?
No, that was a priori. I had done a 3-page comic for Funny Animals, and even there, the framing device is a father telling a very young child a bedtime story. And so that was just built into how I could even find a way to move through this. To remove myself from it would be to make myself an objective lens, someone looking at something as if it could be told. And that was doomed. And it didn't take long to figure out that was doomed. I think it was just, I never considered it. Part of it may just have to do with narcissism, of knowing the world through my eyes and my eyes only. But a lot of it just had to do with what could be told, and what could be told is the difficulty of transmitting memories.
Art Spiegelman, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.